Hello, everyone. I'm Tyler Chrestman, and welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Today on the podcast, we are going to talk about the immigration crisis that is happening on the southern border. And note, I am using the word crisis here. The Biden administration has yet to use that word. They're calling it a challenge or an obstacle, but they are not acknowledging that it is a crisis, but it is, in fact, a crisis. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to dissect exactly what's causing it, why it's happening today, and what we can do to fix it. We're going to do a little bit of that at the end. So first, what is causing it? Well, in Joe Biden's first week in the office, he canceled construction of the southern border wall. He ended the Donald Trump policy of remain in Mexico, and he also canceled the safe third country agreement. Biden also put a moratorium on all deportations. So those were four things that he did right off the bat. Now, a little bit about Trump here. Donald Trump, his rhetoric could be very extreme, but by the end of his presidency, his actual policy when it came to the southern border was really good. Joe Biden obviously could not admit that. So instead of just keeping the good bits and trying to perfect the things that he wished to change, he basically lit a match and burned the whole thing to the ground while simultaneously blaming Trump. So these policies that Joe Biden counteracted, that he canceled right off the bat. According to reporting by Al Jazeera, the number of border crossings has gone up significantly. There were 78,000 enforcement encounters at the southern border in January of this year, 2021. Now, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, this is more than double the number that attempted just a year ago in January of 2020. So border crossings are up 100% over the course of 1 year. But this doesn't tell the whole story, because by the end of Donald Trump's presidency at the end of last year, they're up significantly. So these policies that Joe Biden canceled, what exactly did they do? Obviously, everyone knows the construction of the border wall. What that did, it built a wall, which, if you want to keep people out, walls are super effective. But what are these other two things that he did right off the bat? So the safe third country agreement that he canceled, this stated that migrants from Central America first had to apply for refugee status in neighboring countries before applying to the U.S. So that is a really good policy, because there's no reason why you should bypass 8 countries and come straight to the U.S. if you are actually a refugee. Most refugees do not get the luxury of just walking to the United States. So in other countries, for example, in other parts of the world, you go to a neighboring country, you claim refugee status, and then they handle you there. Now, obviously, refugees get taken in all over the world. The United States has led the world in refugees for the last 20 years, except in, I think, 2019 and 2017, maybe. But two of the years of Donald Trump's presidency, when we cut back on refugees. But we've led the world in taking in refugees for 2 decades. But this was a good policy, because what he acknowledged was the fact that there's no reason why you should just walk straight here and claim refugee status. We still take in refugees, but you can't just walk here. So that was a good thing. Joe Biden canceled that. The other thing was that if you made it to the U.S. and you wanted to claim asylum, you had to remain in Mexico. This is a fantastic policy, because here's what happens. If you make it to the border and you are caught trying to cross illegally and you claim refugee status, the old policy was that you would be released into the interior of the United States and given a court date and said, hey, just show up for your court date. Now, people will often talk about the fact that most people show up for their court date. This is true. Most people show up for their first court date, and after that, they disappear, and that we don't have the time nor the resources to track them down and deport them. So this is a terrible policy, because we are not adjudicating refugee status claims, and we're just releasing people into the interior of the United States. That's a bad policy, and he canceled it. The other thing that Joe Biden has done is they've thrown out this new amnesty deal, where they're going to try and have an amnesty package that has an 8-year path to citizenship for illegal immigrants. So if you are here illegally, in 8 years, you could be a citizen of the United States. That means a social security number. That means a permanent resident visa. That means the ability to work freely. So Joe Biden has basically said, you can come here. You can claim asylum status. You'll be let in for free. You don't have to wait in Mexico. You can be released into the moratorium on all deportations. And he canceled construction of the border wall. Now, all of these things combined with the amnesty, a carrot at the end of the stick, has created a magnet for the southern border. And we have seen a surge because of that magnet. These are pulling policies. These policies are pulling people to the southern border in a way that they weren't under Donald Trump because they knew immigration law would actually be enforced. Biden has already allowed 25,000 migrants who are harboring in Mexico under the Remain in Mexico provision into the United States to await decision on their refugee status. That's 25,000 people who just came in real quick. There are currently 1.2 million pending immigration cases, and the ability to manage that caseload is non-existent. It has eroded considerably. First under Corona, where they shut down court cases, everything got pushed back, and it just is not there. So we have 1.2 million cases to hear in the court system to determine refugee status. Should all 1.2 million of those people be allowed to remain in the United States until their case load is figured out? That seems ridiculous. There's also been a growing influx of migrants and has led to a record number of children being held at immigration facilities. This is as of March 8th. By the way, in the same facilities that Donald Trump used when the left was entirely outraged about kids in cages, Joe Biden reopened the facilities. They said they renovated them. This is barely true. They didn't. These are the same facilities that people were being used when everyone was up in arms about kids in cages. The kids are held at these facilities for up to 72 hours before their cases are transferred to the Department of Health and Human Services for continued care and reunification. Now, CBS News reported that at least 7,000 migrant children entered the U.S. in February. These numbers are 4 times higher than they were at the end of last year. So 4 times as many children are now crossing the border, which means 4 times as many kids are now being held in detainment. The Biden administration, here's another terrible policy. The Biden administration is reportedly rushing to convert its existing facilities, these places where they house children, into what they've called, quote, reception centers, meant to rapidly process migrant families with the goal of releasing them into the U.S. within 72 hours. This is insane. The Biden administration is openly talking about open borders at this point. They are saying that they are not going to enforce the laws of the United States. They are just going to catch people who illegally cross, take them to a nice, quote, reception center, maybe give them some Kool-Aid, pat them on the back, and then release them into the interior. This is unreal. I don't understand how when everyone was up in arms and we talked about the Democrats want open borders and all the Democrats said, no, we don't. That's silly. Ridiculous. This is open borders with just a couple extra steps. This is open borders where you're saying we're going to catch people. We're going to house them at a facility for up to 72 hours, but the goal is going to be reunification with families. So is this not an incentive to send children under the age of 18 into the United States as long as you can find someone on the interior to sponsor them? Why is this okay? Why are we letting people break the law and then instead of enforcing the law and figuring out a way to send those people back to family wherever it is that they came from, we're just going to release them into the interior of the United States? Not okay. It's not okay to break the law in any other capacity. In any other capacity, if you break the law, people say that's bad. But for some reason, borders just don't seem to apply. We have a law. You can't enter this country illegally. You can't get on a plane from Europe and come here and not show your passport and then we just say, oh, okay, well, I get it. Doesn't work in any other capacity. This is ridiculous. It makes absolutely no sense. These policies are designed. The amnesty bill in itself seems a political move more than anything else, calculated by Democrats to wield more political power. This is not about being humane to the 11 plus million people who live in this country illegally. This is about power, because what they've done is they crunched the numbers and they realized that immigrants from Mexico are more democratic. That's what this seems like. It does not seem like a way. If the 11 plus million immigrants from Mexico voted Republican. Do you think the Democrats would be pushing for that in California? The answer is obviously no. If you break the law, if you come here illegally, we're going to talk about this at the end, there might be some incentive to have an amnesty bill. Again, we're going to talk about it at the end. But you don't get citizenship if you come here illegally. There might be an amnesty bill, maybe a green card, permanent residence green card, not citizenship. That's different. That's for people who follow the law. This is not great. And to act as though Joe Biden's policies, the Democratic policies on the table, are not creating a pull incentive for people to come to the United States seems absurd. Again, we have more children being held in detainment centers than ever were held under the Donald Trump presidency right now today. Why are people not up in arms about it? Because it's Joe Biden in office. It's funny, you can see these side by sides. I wish I had pulled some up of some of the newspaper coverage and online media coverage where you can basically show the side by side of the way that they talked about Donald Trump housing children and the way that they talk about Joe Biden housing children. When Donald Trump did it, it was kids in cages. And when Joe Biden does it, it's a tent facility or it's a warehouse. It's not kids in cages. It's not pictures of crying orphans or AOC at a chain fence 300 yards away from a facility in a white dress crying. It's not that, but it's migrant camps. And they say it's like a summer camp under Joe Biden. They were talking about soccer fields and whatever, video games, all these nice stuff that they had. And they said it was like a summer camp for kids. Again, same facilities being used, but it's a summer camp now, according to Joe Biden. And it was kids in cages and a humanitarian crisis, according to Kamala Harris, when it was Donald Trump. Just ridiculous, just nonsensical. So let's talk about this real quick. What is the solution to this? There is a solution. But for some reason, Democrats don't like it, even though it makes complete sense. The first step to solving the immigration crisis on the border, number one, build a wall. I don't care what you call it. I don't care if it's Donald Trump's wall. You can call it a wall. You can call it a barrier, but you should have a physical way to prevent people from crossing the border illegally. Now, it's not going to be foolproof, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be 100% effective. What it does need to be is a deterrent in a way to apprehend more people. Now, I have seen some things that said when they built a wall in San Diego, they decreased the crossings illegally into San Diego by 90%. That was the barrier they built in the 90s. When they built the wall in Israel on the West Bank, they saw a similar reduction. Walls work for every other people who pretend that this wall won't work. I have a question for you. Why is it that walls have always worked throughout history at keeping people out, but for some reason the southern border seems to be impossible? The Great Wall in China, every castle you've ever seen or read about that had a gigantic wall around it, the walls, the fences that you see around public buildings like the White House when they just had that big chain link fence all the way around it. Fences, walls, barriers, they work. They always will. Again, it doesn't need to be 100%, but what it needs to be is a way to slow the flow from the southern border. Build the wall, number one. Number two, we need a comprehensive visa tracking system in this country. 40% of all the people, all the illegal immigrants in this country, come here legally and then overstay their visas until they're illegal. We need a way to be able to track that and hold them accountable. It doesn't exist right now. That would be number two. Number three, we have to reform. This is actually not about illegal immigration. I might leave this one off until we talk about all the things we want to do with immigration. There are some things about our legal immigrant policy that we should change, but that's actually not about illegal, so we'll leave it off here. And then three, if you have a physical barrier and you can verify that the people are not coming en masse through the southern border illegally. Two, you have the visa tracking system so that we can keep track of every person who overstays their visa and we can deport them. And three, we need more money into the court system to to adjudicate the 1.2 million backlog cases of amnesty. We need a good way to do that. And again, those people should not be in the United States just because. They need to be housed in a facility on the other side of the border, not just released into the interior of their own recognizance. That seems ridiculous. So those three things. And then, let's say we do all those things. We can verify that the border is fine. We have the visa tracking system. We have all the good policy in place. Then you can talk about an amnesty bill. But again, amnesty does not mean citizenship. It does not mean the ability to vote. You do not get a voice in the political future of the country if you broke the laws to get here. However, stay and work. We don't want to deport 11 plus million people. That seems inhumane and unrealistic. But you don't get a vote. That seems totally fair. But again, we are way, way, way too quick to want to talk about this amnesty bill. And an 8-year path to citizenship is ridiculous. You don't get a vote if you came here illegally. So that's a quick overview of the crisis at the border. Joe Biden's immigration policies are probably the thing that I dislike the most. I think that he has done a terrible job with this policy, and the crisis on the border is just going to get worse. I do not see this getting better anytime soon. We are going to leave it there today. So, real quick, personal note, kind of personal. The Facebook advertising has changed their policies. So we were doing really well on Facebook. We were getting a bunch of views and a lot of interactions, but you can't advertise on Facebook anymore, or this podcast can't advertise on Facebook anymore. They changed their policy. So if you want to help out the podcast, us continue to grow and get better, get bigger, and all that good stuff, then make sure you share, like, subscribe, send it to people, whatever it is you want to do. But sharing it really helps. The more we can get out there, the wider we circulate, and the wider we circulate, the larger we grow. The larger we grow, the better it goes. Is that a rhyme? I don't know. Can't tell. May have been a great rhyme. Put it down in my rhyme notebook for when I drop my rap album later. We're going to leave it there. Any questions or comments, email me, tyler@tylerchrestman.org, or just leave a comment in the YouTube or Facebook videos, and I will answer them on the next podcast. I always love the questions, always love the comments, even the less than pleasant ones. They make me laugh. I'm going to leave it there today. I am Tyler Chrestman. Hope you guys have a wonderful day.